This is Parker Hesse. This is Sam Branks. You have the pleasure of listening to Hawkeyes and Tallboys. Cheers, motherfuckers.
Welcome to the Hawkeyes and Tallboys podcast, featuring your hosts, Bo Freeborn.
You know, guys, even though we get 2 conference losses, we're still going to end up 9-3. We're going to win the West, for sure.
Dylan Pond.
Here's the thing, fellas. I'm going with it. 12-0, baby. We're going to do it. Let's fucking go. Woo!
And Rob Wall.
I mean, that would be shocking. But we can do it. I mean, I think we can.
So crack a tall boy and go Hawks.
Welcome in to another episode of Hawkeyes and Tallboys. I'm Rob.
I'm Dylan.
And I'm Bo.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Oh,
Oh,
Cannot
man.
wait to drink you.
is there anything better after a long 4 days of work than an ice cold Milwaukee's finest Miller Lite? I think not.
I'm
Be a
having a
little
bush
better if it was a
light,
Bush Light. Yeah.
but either way, to each their own.
Mhm.
We know that we differ on this subject. But we just want to welcome everybody into this episode of Hawkeyes and Tallboys. We are back after a much needed bye week time away. You know, the Hawks took some time off. We took some time. And now we're back. We're together, and we're going to preview this Saturday's game against the Wisconsin Badgers. And normally, you guys know, as we have been doing every episode this season, you know, we have had somebody from the other team, you kind of join us on the podcast, a special guest. They're going to talk us through what's going on, you know, on their, you know, team that they, you know, that they're fans of. And this week we don't have one, and that's okay. We did have one lined up, and things come up in life sometimes. Dylan.
That's right. That's right, Coach. Coach Riley, if you're listening, we're not mad. We're just disappointed. So, no, but Coach, good guy in all of my interactions with him. Sounds like he was bummed he couldn't make it. I think he was saying something about potentially having a team in the playoffs. So, I mean, awesome for him. We're happy for him there, and the fact that he couldn't make it, we get it. And he gave me some sound bites to go off of, and you know, some of his takes that he wanted to have and wanted us to discuss. So we'll definitely get to quite a bit of those.
And before we do, hashtag, but first, we need to, normally we take this time to look back on the past week and talk about how the Hawks destroyed their opponent. But this last week was a bye week, as you know. And the week before, we actually ended up losing to Purdue 24-7. It was a sad day. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So Dylan, before the episode, actually suggested that we all have one takeaway from that game to leave you with as listeners before we move on with our lives and get to the real important things, which is that Wisconsin is going to, be playing a football game against the Iowa Hawkeyes this Saturday. Bo, you want to go ahead and start us out with a takeaway?
Yeah, it sucked. Rob, we'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, it really sucked. Really hated every second of it. Dylan?
Yeah, I was sitting there live for it. It sucked. It was not fun. And I made my group listen to Whiskey Lullaby twice on the way home. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm moving on.
So this
On to
Saturday, on to Wisconsin. So guys, this Saturday, our number 11 ranked Hawkeyes, we actually fell 9 because of that game. We fell 9 spots in the AP poll, which is fine. Doesn't matter. We're still a ranked team. We're still one of the best teams in the country, and we still got a shot to win the Big Ten championship. At least it looks like to be that way. But we are actually going to be in Madison, Wisconsin at Camp Randall Stadium against Wisconsin. It's an 11 a.m. game. Let's talk about this Wisconsin team, guys. Dill, what kind of stuff did Coach leave us with?
Absolutely. So a few things he threw at us, just some quick facts. Not necessarily hot takes, but just in general. He said, guys, Iowa is plus 11 in turnover differential this year. Wisconsin is -7.
Ooh.
So he says, without giving his prediction, he says whoever wins the turnover margin probably wins this game. Second point he brought up, Iowa is 112th in the nation in passing efficiency. Pretty brutal, right? Yeah, Wisconsin's 130th. They're literally dead last in all of FBS. So, ouch. So, safe to say, quarterback duel of the century come Saturday at Camp Randall at 11 a.m. No, but seriously, I mean, I think we're going to expect to see some ground and pound. That Ches Malusi, that Clemson transfer running back for them, he's been playing extremely well, absolute stud. It seems like he's kind of been the guy, especially these past few games where they turned it around, been winning. Graham Mertz, highly touted quarterback. I can't remember exactly where he's from, but really hasn't shown a whole hell of a lot just yet. I think the potential is there and his weapons are there. I don't know if it's between the years with him or what, but he could have a big day. It's always possible. I know he hasn't had a very good year, looking at 945 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Youch.
Yikes.
But he's still a talent nonetheless. So one of the things that this defense will have to take accounting for. And then obviously Wisconsin's always seems to have some pretty solid wide receivers in Danny Davis, Kendrick Pryor, and then another fellow that we know quite a bit from the past few years is Jake Ferguson, their tight end. So overall, not great on offense, but they got the playmakers there. They're always going to have that big offensive line. They're going to be able to run the ball. And if you let them have their way with you, it's going to be a long day and we're going to get ran over. So defense has got to step up to the plate. And then also Wisconsin defensively, absolute studs. Jim Leonard, that's his name, right? Jim. Coach Jim Leonard, defense coordinator for them, very well respected in the football community, especially college football. Right now, most are returning from last year, number 2 defense right now in the Big Ten. They forced 4 fumbles, recovered them all, 5 picks as well. Got a couple stud linebackers in Leo Chanel and Jack Sanborn, as well as Scott Nelson in that secondary. And they just got playmakers on that side of the ball, and I think we've seen quite a bit of that. They cut a lot of slack for that week 1 loss versus Penn State. But even in that showing, they showed what a good defense they had. Just kind of arguably similar to Iowa, where their defense is carrying their offense a little bit and keeping them in ball games. So it's going to be an interesting battle, guys. I'm excited for it. If you're a traditionalist Big Ten football fan, kind of like gearing up for that Penn State game, it's going to be ground and pound. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be battling out in the trenches. And frankly, that gets me a little fired up. Bo, what do you think?
Yeah, I liked everything you said there. I think what we have in similar with Wisconsin is I'm going to go ahead and say average quarterback play. I want to say the fans probably feel the same about Graham Mertz as Iowa fans feel about Spencer Petras at this time. And to be honest, I mean, that's a fair assumption, although Graham really hasn't been playing very well, and that's why they're 4-3 right now. But, they live and die. They're going to have to live and die by the run, especially with how big and how great our defense has been playing, especially in the secondary. So if Graham Mertz has no time to throw or is thrown to receivers who are, covered up by this blanket of a defense, they're going to have to find something on the ground to get through this Iowa defense and actually win the game. But like you said, in terms of their defense, man, they are solid. And I mean, they're number 2 defense in the Big Ten and for a reason, because they can really stuff the run and they can really limit the big plays. So our offense is going to have to do a really good job of giving Petras some time to develop plays, make the right reads down the field, but should make for a really fun, interesting game come Saturday.
Absolutely, guys. You want to talk about team defense, which is crazy. Wisconsin's team defense is ranked 2nd actually in all of football behind Georgia. They're only allowing 223 yards a game and 3.93 yards a play. It's kind of an interesting stat line there of this defense that we're going to be facing. To put it in perspective, Iowa State is actually number 3 right now. Georgia, like I said, is number 1. Iowa is actually 12, although I do think we either lead or are close and close to the top in when it comes to turnovers forced as far as defense goes. So yeah, I do think this is going to be a defensive struggle, the entire way. Wisconsin. A lot of people will talk about when Iowa plays Wisconsin. Wisconsin has doesn't have maybe as prestigious of a program as Iowa, and it seems like they almost as in the last 10 years have sort of like tried to mimic the same style of play as Iowa. And we've seen over the last 5 years that they've actually maybe done it better than we have, and they've had some pretty prolific running backs sort of go through the program, and another one just seems to be right along with those guys is Malusi. I believe so. So he's averaging 5 yards a carry off of that 139 attempts, which is pretty crazy when you consider like our running backs. And I don't really know exactly like if you can consider that we've really established the run in a lot of the games that we've played. But for instance, Tyler Goodson's averaged 4.3 off 136 attempts. And we can see what he does on the field. So it's interesting to see that this Wisconsin team knows how to run the ball and they know how to play good defense, just very similar to the way we do.
Yeah, and I think that they were trying to find their identity the first couple of games. I think that they tried to put too much in Graham Mertz's shoulders, and they really need to find themselves in the run game. I think that they may or may not have had a few injuries on the offensive line. That's usually where they're really consistent. And if their offensive line play, similar to Iowa, isn't up to par, you're going to see a lot more of these situations where the running backs are not going to be excelling at this time. But you look at Wisconsin's losses. I mean, they lost to a really good defense in Penn State. Notre Dame, that was a bad loss. Looks a lot worse than what it was, but they're not a great team in my opinion. And then Michigan, which they haven't played a ranked team yet, so we don't know how good their team is. But they have a couple of really good D linemen and linebackers there at Michigan. So for us to sit here and say that Wisconsin's run game is average. We probably won't know how good they are until A, they play Iowa, or B, how good they are at the end of the season.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know Rob touched on this a little bit, and I'd be remiss to not bring it up because I feel like it's so essential to the, past 20 years of the Wisconsin-Iowa rivalry and the battle for the Heartland is that in 2010, for those of you Hawk fans that might remember, there was a young man visiting. His name was Melvin Gordon, visiting Iowa City. He was already committed to Iowa. He was ready to be a Hawk. Well then, Mr. Brett Bielema, the man that recently took over the Illini football program to the East in Champaign, drew something up out of his back pocket where it looked like Iowa was going to win this ball game. I think at the time it was for sure a top 25 matchup. Couldn't tell you if it was top 15 or what exactly it was. Big game, right? Well, Brett Bielema dials up this fake punt, and the rest is history. Iowa has, with the exception of last year, won one time in the past 10 years, I think, so 2015 and 2021, so twice since 2010. I mean, it's just incredible where, how quickly the tides turned there. And it's credit, frankly, to Barry Alvarez, former Hawkeye and former Skur as well. And just, he kind of took over a dumpster fire. Believe it or not, Wisconsin was kind of the doormat of the Big Ten for a long time. And then he comes in and, with the exception of like Ron Dane and, some studs like that have come through, but he came in and used those principles that he learned from Hayden Fry and from, Tom Osborne over at Nebraska and applied those to Wisconsin and really turned them into an annual contender. And obviously, how many Big West titles do they have since the Big West and Big Ten East have became a thing? So yeah, I absolutely nothing but credit to them guys. They're studs. They've had our number. Obviously, we got them last year. I think it was a little bit of a down year, and it's going to come back to being slobber knocker Big Ten football. And Bo touched on it as well. I think, their line is just starting to get healthy, so you're seeing them gel a little bit. So, for those of you listeners, if you're thinking, oh, Dill sounds a little nervous. Yeah, hell yeah, I am. This is a good team. this is a good team. I don't care what that 4-3 record says. Toss those records out the window for Big Ten West games for a reason, because they're going to come ready to play.
And here's the deal too. Wisconsin's 2-2 in the Big Ten. Iowa right now has 1 loss. So we are in sole possession of first place in the Big Ten. But to that being said, 1 loss, we're right there. I mean, Wisconsin's right there. 1 loss, Purdue is right there. So all these games down the stretch, this is going to be a brutal stretch, starting with a really good team in Wisconsin. I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying a really good team, but to be honest, they like Dill said, they've had our number. So it's going to be a tough task no matter what we're going to come up against this weekend.
Oh,
and guys, I mean, listeners, to everyone listening, I mean, we've been covering Big Ten football for 3 years straight. We've been watching it for much longer. I mean, combined probably over 30 years. You look at Dylan said it. These Big Ten West games, like, you can just literally throw out the records, throw out the rankings, because we just beat up on each other. The Big Ten, if you are new to the Big Ten, obviously we just muck everything up. We lose to Purdue pretty handedly 24-7. Not to bring that up, but then Wisconsin, who I think lost to Illinois, but then they beat Purdue pretty badly last week. Hold on, let me pull up their schedule. Anyways, if you were to look at the schedules of the teams, obviously we know that the transitive property isn't something that works in college football, but especially in the Big Ten, it literally means nothing. So it's really hard to really compare these teams until they hike the ball on Saturday at 11.
To that point too, Dylan, sorry, Dylan, but Dylan and I talked about this too. Purdue, they did everything they could against Iowa. Honestly, they played flawless. They played spectacular. They did anything they wanted to, and everything went right for them. And I want to say that they were just having a terrific week. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses, but for them to go out and lose to Wisconsin the week after beating Iowa, I feel like that was really to be expected.
Sorry, Wisconsin beat Illinois. Sorry, keep going.
Correct. But no, that's a good point there too, Bo, because it was funny if you heard in Jeff Brom's post-game conference after the Wisconsin game, he was like, Wisconsin doubled up on David Bell, and that presented some challenges for us. But then again, most teams have been doing that all year except Iowa. And it's like, I hear that. And I hate to dwell. I really do hate to dwell. But it's like, Jesus Christ, David Bell has tore you up for the past 3 years. And did he just, nope, stick to base. We'll keep him in front of us. Yeah, that worked out well. Okay. Anyways, I said I was over it. I meant it. I'm over it. Let's move on.
Well, thankfully this weekend we don't have a David Bell type player. I mean, Kendrick Pryor and Danny Davis are both great players. I want to say they've been there this is their 6th year. I want to say they used COVID years, and Jake Ferguson's the same way too. So, I mean, yeah, they have some pretty good receivers, but nothing like David Bell.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely not. No. And, like we were talking about before, this is going to be, that slobber knocker. This game is going to be won in the trenches, and this game is going to be won in special teams, time of possession, and, like Coach told us, turnovers as well.
Yep. And I do have a correction to make, because going into the bye week, Iowa slid to 11th in the AP poll, but they're actually this week number 9. So there were some other teams that moved in the AP poll, during Iowa's bye week, which actually moved them up a little bit. But like I said, rankings really don't matter when it comes to this game. And I do want to talk about Graham Mertz a little bit too, their quarterback, because I know that I feel like he had an okay year last year. He was the starter. He's a sophomore this year, not having the greatest year. I think we talked about how he's sort of similar to Spencer, but I would put Spencer in a tier above Graham. I don't think that Graham is in the same conversation as Spencer, and I think that he sort of is, held them back with the, the throws that he's tried to thread, in there and with the interceptions that he's been responsible for. So I wanted to touch base there. I think that could be something that, is a tough weakness for the Wisconsin team.
It always seems like Wisconsin's always one quarterback away from being a tremendous team. And you guys can make millions off of anybody ever saying that too. But back to my comment, what I meant was I think the fans are frustrated because they think that our quarterbacks should be able to outperform, what our expectations are, right? Graham Mertz came out week 1 last year against Illinois, threw 5 touchdown passes. Everyone thought he was Heisman favorite, right? And then slowly started to degress. And now we see this year, he's kind of picking up right where he left off. He's kind of one of those Hornibrook, very average quarterbacks that Wisconsin has year after year. Honestly, the best quarterback from my recent memory was Russell Wilson when he played there. If they had somebody like him, even somebody who could sit back and pass, as opposed to where Russ could, run and pass at the same time, they would be a tremendous team because, like you said, Rob, they have so many good players on their team. They just can't get the ball to him. Now, comparing him and Spencer right now, or at least where our programs are at, I think most Wisconsin fans can sit here and say the same thing as Iowa fans are. We really have no depth at quarterback. Just say you want to put in our second string. I love Alex Padilla. I think he's doing tremendous things. Also the same thing with Deuce Hogan, but you throw them out there, they A, have no game time experience, and B, they don't know the offense 100%, and they don't have, rhythm with the ones. It's just going to be throwing, a sack of potatoes out there. So I hate to say this for Wisconsin fans, but I think Graham Mertz is really the best option to have, and that's why they haven't gone with anybody else yet.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And that's always how you can kind of distinguish the Iowa fans that are aware of what's going on from, the Iowa State quote unquote Tavern Hawks, where they're like, oh, we need to bench Spencer and put in Padilla. Oh. It's like, geez, did you watch like the kid scrimmage or spring or anything? Like Padilla is nowhere near close to ready. I think he's going to be, I definitely think he's going to be a quality football player. And, whether that be here or say he does get frustrated and transfer out, I don't know, because I've heard that a lot too.
To go back to Colorado State.
Yeah, honestly, we talked about that with our buddy Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, I almost called him Cam because he's Cam's chorizo, Colorado State, man. But good dude. No, but it's just asinine to me how people think that, Spencer needs to be replaced, especially after, a 4 interception performance. Yeah, not his best game in the world. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. And what I love about this kid too, and I know people, especially our fans, probably think I'm a Spencer, dick rider or whatever, and that's not the case. If he wasn't doing the job, I would be glad to let him fall on the sword and, see what the backups got. But that's not the case. His offensive line has given him absolutely no time. And this comes from a guy that played offensive line and knows what it's all about. Like George Karlaftis, granted, he's first team All-American. He's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. But he made them look like fools. There was a play going around on Twitter, these past few days where Karlaftis not only juked out Nick DeYoung out of his shoes, our starting right tackle, but then Tyler Goodson comes up to, make a chop block on him and, hesitates for 1 second and literally goes right around him. And then Spencer, who has time for, his first read, and that's it, has to throw the ball away because, he's not fast enough to get away from George Karlaftis. Guess what? Iowa Twitter, nobody is fast enough to get away from George Karlaftis, with the exception of maybe, Johnny Manziel and guys with similar speed. And we do not have any of those quarterbacks on our roster right now. So I don't know what you want. It starts up front. This is Iowa football. If the offensive line is not gelling, the game is not going to go well. If the defensive line is not plugging gaps, the game is not going to go well. Guess what happened versus Purdue? The offensive line played like shit. The defensive line played like shit. Everybody else looks like shit. That's the team you've grown up watching, learned to love. That is what it is. So if you're going to get beat on the offensive line and the defensive line, Iowa football is not going to have a good time. That's how it is. We got to get better, and we got to get better up front. And I guarantee you that Brian Ferentz and oh my God, I just had a brain fart. I almost said Tim Polisic, who's our new offensive line coach.
Barnett.
Thank you. I guarantee Brian Ferentz, Barnett, and Kirk Ferentz have been working with these guys the past 2 weeks.
Yeah,
they're gonna be ready to go.
Well,
and not
one
to
thing
add
too,
gasoline to that fire, Dill, that you were just giving us. But look at these numbers, guys. Spencer Petras sacked 18 times in the year. That's about 2.5 times a game. That's one full sack more than Graham Mertz has been sacked. He's been sacked 10 times in the same amount of games. And so, I mean, just there, I mean, obviously, probably the run pass differential might have something to do with it. But at the same time, I mean, we got to be able to give him time, and we got to be able to not allow these sacks to happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hear these morons because, as you guys know, I got season tickets. I hear these morons around me like, "Oh my God, this guy was wide open or that guy was wide open." Okay, yeah, you have a second and a half to make that call. It's not like he's sitting back there all day just staring down his first read, waiting to throw to him. No, he's going through his reads when he has a chance. But when you got somebody in your face after a second and a half, what are you supposed to do? It's the same thing with people that say Tyler Goodson's running backwards. He isn't running backwards. As soon as he gets the ball handed off to him, he's got a guy in his face. Like, Iowa runs a zone blocking scheme up front, when it comes to running the ball. And I'm going on a different tangent now. I'm sorry. But literally, it takes all 10 of those guys. And I say 10 because I'm excluding the quarterback. So it takes all 10 blocking perfectly for the zone concept to work. Now, you can hate on the zone blocking scheme all you want. I get that. I have my personal flaws with it as well. But right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what they run. So if one person makes a mistake, everything gets shut down, everything goes to hell. If everybody does their job perfect, it's a touchdown. Now, obviously, it's not going to happen ever. But when you get 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 offensive linemen making mistakes on that, that's when you have 3 or 4 guys, 2 or 3 guys in the backfield as soon as Tyler Goodson gets the handoff. And then what do you expect him to do? Just the offensive line play. It's so uncharacteristic of a Kirk Ferentz coach team. But you look at the depth. And it's youthful depth, where I think a lot of these guys are going to be studs. You look at Mason Richmond. You look at backup tackle Tyler Ellsbury, Nick DeYoung. I guarantee I'm missing a few here. Cody Ince, Connor Colby. Just across the board, these guys are just young. They're learning. And as much as it sucks, that's how you learn. You get your ass kicked by a guy like George Karlaftis. Well, then you come out next week and you get some, mediocre bum, and you're able to put him on his ass a few times. Like that. That's how you get better.
And let me ask a question coming from the public opinion who maybe doesn't know a ton about the offensive blocking scheme still. So I know you're our resident expert on this. So gap, the other way that you would have an offensive line scheme is gap blocking scheme. Is that correct? So basically,
Correct.
Instead of having like a zone, which is more or less winning a one-on-one matchup against the guy that you're assigned to on a given formation, gap, you're pulling people, you're creating a hole for the running back to run through. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. So think of gap as, what we were always told, in my glory days, blah, 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 playing, is you think your number one priority is your inside gap. That's it. That's all you got to do. And essentially it's a mauler offensive line where it's like, okay, you want to pancake the nose tackle that's right in front of you as a center. Okay. And then you want to get up and go get a linebacker kind of thing. Or, if say that nose tackle lines up to the right of the center, or from the center's right, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So him and that right guard together want to get that guy off the ball. And then once, that double team takes full effect, then the next guy can move on to a linebacker, which that kind of crosses over with the zone scheme as well a little bit. But that's the thought process, where the inside gap is your number one responsibility.
Gotcha. So a lot of these guys who are young, they may not be coming from a zone scheme from in high school.
Oh, absolutely not. I think it's very rare to see any zone scheme in high. It's rare to see zone schemes in college, for Christ's sakes. I think it's pretty commonplace in the NFL anymore, but it's very, very rare at the college level. That's why guys like, Tristan Wirfs, Brian Balaga, Riley Reif, I'm probably missing 10 because we've had so many studs come out of the University of Iowa. That's why those guys come in year one and have success. That's why Tristan Wirfs is, arguably the best left tackle in the NFL right now as a second-year player, because they come from that system. And, they have that beat into their head. And obviously he's a freak athletically. We all saw him jump out of a pool, a 3-foot deep pool. Like, that's just ridiculous. But,
You know, and I want to bring this up too, and I want to thank Tom Kaker today for giving me the inspiration here. But you know, we haven't seen a cohesive unit out of this offensive line either. And I hate to keep on dogging these guys, but you know, think of how many guys we keep on rotating because of A, depth, and B, experience. We haven't had one true group go in from left to right and say, hey, you know, we are the starters. We are maintaining these roles. Just like Bill said last week, I think Jack Plum came in at right tackle for Nick Young a couple times after Karlaftis or whatever his last name was, ended up blowing him up there. You know, Justin Britt is still continuing to come in and out while Shooter is, you know, getting back into shape then too. So, you know, we've seen a ton of movement, and based off of what I heard from Tom Kaker today, they talked to Kirk and they were hopeful to kind of get a cohesive unit following the bye week. And now, thankfully, Coney Ince is back, so we have a little bit more structure there on the left side, but don't know if we even have a cohesive unit right now or even a starting unit just based off of A, injuries, and B, inexperience.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead, Rob.
Sure. So just to give you some perspective, so this is what it's listed as right now, just to run down this unit on the offensive line. And we're getting into the weeds on the O-line, and I really like it because I feel like this game is going to be one of the trenches, but more on that later. Right now, left tackle, Mason Richmond is listed, freshman, redshirt freshman, at left tackle, number 78. Shooters in there, left guard, Kyler Schott, 64 is his number. Tyler Linderbaum obviously holding down the middle. He's going to be the mainstay all season. Connor Colby, freshman, 77 at right guard. And then Nick DeYoung, right tackle, 56. So Cody Ince is behind Shooter at left guard right now. Jack Plum behind Mason Richard at left tackle. Justin Britt is behind Connor Colby at right guard, and then our boy Tyler Ellsbury behind Nick DeYoung at right tackle.
Yeah, and I think that, to be quite honest, I think that Ince brings a little bit more to the table just with his size and experience. I really think that having him back this week is going to be a huge plus for us. Not to say that Shooter's done a bad job by any means, because he hasn't. He's been a really reliable left guard. But I think that throwing Ince in there, even at right guard too, has been good for Iowa this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wonder if we'll see in this. I wonder if this unit will last. Likely they're going to cycle guys in and out and see what's working, like, you know, and ride the hot hand, as Kirk Ferentz likes to say. But yeah, what do you think, Dill, about that unit?
Oh, that's the way to go. I think, you know, Mason Richmond at that left tackle spot has shown enough flashes this year to be the guy. You said they had Shooter right now listed at that left guard spot. Perfect. His experience speaks for himself. Just to show you, you know, how well liked this guy is on the time, you know, Tyler Linderbaum, or I think Schott was talking about how him and Linderbaum went duck hunting together, you know, last week and on the bye week. So obviously well liked, you know, those are two good guys to have next to each other on an offensive line. So left side, yeah, I for the most part feel good about it. You've seen Mason Richmond make his share of mistakes at that left tackle spot. Again, a young guy in the toughest position potentially on that offensive line. So I'm okay with seeing some of those mistakes. It's the right side where we start to get a little bit shaky, where, you know, we've kind of had that revolving door at that right guard spot where you've seen a little bit of Justin Britt, you've seen a little bit of Justin Britt, you've seen a little bit of Cody Ince, you've seen a little bit of Connor Colby, thank you. So, and that's just mainly due to injuries. So, you know, I think you ride Cody Ince as long as you can, that hot hand, rotate Connor Colby in as you can, as well as Justin Britt. You know, I feel like those guard spots can be rotated quite a bit. And like you said, Rob, really ride that hot hand, because I know I just gave him a lot of crap, but I really do think that Nick DeYoung is, you know, quite the talent that we got at right tackle. And I think he could potentially be one of our next great walk-on stories. I really do. So
he's just a sophomore.
Yeah, he's a young guy. And that's the thing about this offensive line is they're so young. You know, this experience, it's vital. It's absolutely vital. But here's the thing, is they're talented and they got some high expectations, and none higher than this weekend going up against, I mean, you're talking about straight up maulers. You got, you know, 6'6", 310, 315, 320 across the board, both on the offensive and defensive lines for Wisconsin. So they're gonna have their hands full, baby, and I'm excited. I really do think they're up to the task. I might be drinking my own Kool-Aid a little bit, but I think they're up to it. And having this bye week came at such a crucial point. I think, that Iowa team was so banged up from the Penn State game, and again, not making excuses by any means, because they frankly played like absolute shit versus Purdue, and it was a disgrace to watch. And I don't think that's being too harsh. I really don't. So that being said, I think the boys are going to come out ready to play, and I am absolutely fired up to see what these fellas can do at Camp Randall, 11 a.m. Offensive line, I'm talking to you. Connor Colby, I'm talking to you. Cody Ince, Tyler Linderbaum, get these boys fucking fired up. Let's roll, baby. Let's roll.
Perfect. And there isn't a better segue to roll right into Dylan's keys to the game.
All right. So I'm going to take a second and cool back down, because I want to talk about, you guys know I hold myself accountable. I always do.
Just like a Miller Lite in your hand, we like to keep it cold. So why don't we just cool down with a Miller Lite cool down? Back to you, Dill.
And I accept that Miller Lite sponsorship. Thank you very much. So Dylan's keys to victory for Purdue. We're going to relive it one last time, and then we're over it for good. Offensively, I said the boys needed to establish the run game, and then the play action pass was going to work wonders. I think in the first couple drives, they absolutely did establish the run, and they did a fairly decent job of that. A couple of missed third downs here and there, and our defense not playing the way that we think it can, and we know it can, frankly. Obviously, in that second half, we were playing from behind, and Purdue did their best Iowa impersonation. It made me physically ill sitting in the stands, where they just got the ball, they ran the clock, they'd get to third down, and then they get the first down, and they just killed the clock. I don't even know what the final time of possession was. I don't want to know, frankly, but I know they won it, and I know they won it by a lot. So that being said, I couldn't even tell you where I was going with that rant, but offensively, we established the run game, but then we couldn't continue it because we had to start playing from behind. So obviously that didn't happen. F for Dylan there. Defensively, bend but don't break. Let them kick field goals all day long. Purdue kicked one field goal and they scored 3 touchdowns. David Bell was an absolute machine. And I just don't understand how we did not see it coming. I really don't. I really, really don't. Which, to be fair, I think we did. But by the time, they stuck, I wanted to say OJ Mudia. You guys remember when I used to say his last name like that?
Yep.
Unbelievable. Funny.
Shout out.
But yeah, shout out OJ. Shout out Mike OJ Mudia. Pardon me, I was laughing. That being said, okay. They stuck Matt Hankins on him, and by that time it was too late. I think Matt Hankins was horribly tired from being out on the field literally all game long, and just got a chat. Looking at time of possession, Boilermakers 34, Iowa 25. Iowa's not going to win a lot of games with that time of possession. Okay. Anyways, back to my defense. So bend but don't break. Let them kick field goals. It didn't happen. We let them score touchdowns. That can't happen. And then special teams, field position. Now I think our team MVP was probably Charlie Jones. He was phenomenal returning the ball. He truly was. And, setting his offense up in good field position, we just couldn't capitalize. We could not. And that, for all of you people that think I'm just the biggest Spencer Petras fan in the world, that falls on Spencer. That falls on Brian Ferentz. That falls on this offensive line. That falls on that entire offensive unit. Horrible. Just blatantly, flat out, it was horrible. And this week, it's got to get better. Otherwise, we will be embarrassed again. That being said, I think it will be. So there we go. Field position battle. Well done, special teams. I give myself an A there because you guys did your job. If only the offense and the defense came to play. All right. Now
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Kidding.
So now guys, I'd like us all collectively to take a deep breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Ready?
Okay.
It's over. Let Purdue out of your body. They're gone. The scary man's gone. That being said, we got Dylan's keys to victory versus Wisconsin. We're going up to Madtown. For those of you that have never been, Bo Cephas, I'm looking at you. It's a great time. You will have fun. We got an 11 a.m. kick. So the Hawks are going to be ready to play. The last time Iowa played at Wisconsin at 11 a.m., 2015, Iowa came out with a W. That being said, here we go. Let's roll. Dylan's keys to victory. Offensively, we need to establish the run. It's absolutely imperative that we establish the one because Spencer Petras can win this game with his arm. That's right. I said it. For those of you that think I'm an idiot, you're wrong, and he's going to prove you wrong Saturday because he can extend these drives through the air, and we're going to find the way to the end zone that way. That's how we win this ball game. Defensively, we're running the 4-3. You're going to see a lot of my man, big number 5 out of Ohio, Justin Jacobs. The dude's an animal. He's all over the place. If you don't know who he is, go back and rewatch that Iowa State game. He kicks ass. Pumped to see it. Love to see it. So he is my key. Justin Jacobs will be the key to victory. That and turnovers. We need minimum 2 turnovers to win this ball game. And then special teams, field position and time of possession are going to win this game. So I'm looking at you, Torrey Taylor. I'm looking at you, Brian Ferentz. Not only do I want to see some big plays and see us get in the end zone, but I want to see us wasting that clock, baby. We can do it. This is a winnable game. I know everybody thinks the sky is falling after getting our asses kicked at home by a subpar Purdue team. Not the case. Not the case, ladies and gentlemen. Those are Dylan's keys to victory. Let's go get us a W.
Dylan's keys to victory have been brought to you by Miller Lite. Anyways, thank you so much. They're an unofficial sponsor, so I'm just going to keep saying that until they sponsor us. I'm like totally fine with that. But that was excellent, Dill. Thank you for holding yourself accountable on what happened in Purdue. And we really appreciate. I really think that maybe you have a potential to be a yoga instructor at some point in the future. The way you handled that woosah for everyone collectively, which is amazing. But I do think this is a winnable game, and I did want to hit on one of your keys to victory. I mean, this game is going to be 11 a.m. in Madison, Wisconsin, at Camp Randall, and the weather for this game is actually going to be partly cloudy, 58 degrees, perfect football weather. There's going to be no rain this time around because I think it was either raining or snowing last time we played up there in Camp Randall. And even though this seems to maybe have the makings of like a slow defensive struggle game, I think that Spencer could come out real, chucking the ball. What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more defensive, and I agree with you completely. I think that it's going to be a grind for both offenses. But, with Riley Moss out again, I really want to see what Scary Terry can do. I've said this before on the episode. I love Deontay Craig. Even though he's not a starter, he's a solid backup player in the D-line. And unfortunately, he's out again this week. So just want to see what the D-line can do about making the noise. As long as those guys can come up and play some good defense, I feel really strongly about this game here for the Hawks.
Moving into getting closer to our predictions, guys. This is the point in the show. If you are an avid listener and you like to put money down on different teams in college football, the degenerates, I'm talking to you. We'd like to go over this week's betting lines so that way you are informed and you can make the best decision to win the most amount of money. This one right now, and according to ESPN, the spread at this point for this game is -3.5 for Wisconsin. So Wisconsin's favored by 3.5 points. I think it's just because they're the home team. And I'm going to actually look up where DraftKings has them right now. But interesting to note, guys, this year's Wisconsin team is 3-4 against the spread, versus the Hawks are 5-2. And so Hawks are +3.5 right now. I'm betting the house against with the Hawks on this one. I really think that they're going to win and cover. But let me pull up those lines. What do you guys think about that initial spread, the way they have that lined out?
I love it. I hope the Hawks look at that and say "fuck you" to Vegas.
I love that.
Yeah, to me, I know we've talked about the lines a little bit before, but typically Vegas is going to give that 3 points to the home team. So what that tells me is Vegas thinks this is, for the most part, a toss-up game with a slight edge to Wisconsin. Coming off, they're hot. Iowa's not. After losing to Purdue, and then obviously Wisconsin put the beat down on them a little bit. So I think the line's right where it needs to be. I have no issue with it whatsoever.
DraftKings has this game at 3.5 as well currently. Now that could be subject to change depending on money coming in on either side. Wisconsin money line, interestingly enough, is -165. Hawks are +145. That's interesting to note. And then the over/under is actually one of the lowest over/unders that I think the Hawks have seen this season. It's totals 36.5 total points here. So they don't expect it to be high scoring. Now, if you remember against Maryland, they also thought that could be a close game. And you all saw where the over/under ended up like that. I think it was in the 60s. So, or even 70s. So take it with a grain of salt. This is what the Sharks think this game is going to end up, which kind of leads us into predictions. And so I don't know if there's anything more to be said about the betting lines, but I did want to throw that out there for all the degenerates out there. And obviously that segment is brought to you by DraftKings. Perfect. Okay, well then let's go ahead and move on straight on to predictions. So I'm going to go first. I really think that this game is going to be close, but I think it's a winnable game for the Hawks. I have an interesting hot take that has to do with this prediction. But if I'm going to bet an amount of money that is going to make me sweat or make it worth it for me, I'm actually going to say that the final score of this game is going to be 17-16 Hawks. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the turnover battle. We already talked about how important the offensive line and the battle in the trenches is going to be. This is a team that's playing itself in the mirror almost, it seems like. And I just think we have the edge with the players and the talent on our roster. What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, I really like that take, Rob, and I think I'm with you. It's going to be a lower scoring game. And with the over/under being so low, it's crazy. But at the same time, these are the type of games that this Iowa-Wisconsin rivalry always seems to get into. So I know you guys aren't going to like me for this. You guys know that I usually pick the opposing team when I want Iowa to win. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here today. But I really do think that Wisconsin's going to come and give Iowa a really good shot. So this is pretty legit in terms of my prediction, but I got 16-13. Wisconsin's going to win by a field goal. They're late in the game here. So Dill, I'll pass to you on your thoughts.
Okay. I'm digesting your predictions into making my own. So I see where you're both coming from. The low scoring affair. Not so fast, my friend. I don't see it. This is going to be a high scoring affair. You're telling me that a Phil Parker defense that just was embarrassed at home by Purdue, by David Bell, is not going to be ready to play this game? Absolutely not. I do not see it. There's no way. There's no way Iowa wins this game, and I think they win big. I think Iowa gets hot. We're going to see some turnovers, and that's what's going to really break this game open. I'm going 34-17. Hawks.
Wow.
Well, I like that take, Dill, obviously. I hate Bo's take, his prediction on that. But you just looking at the scores that Iowa has had over the entire season. I mean, we put up 34 points against Indiana, 27 against Iowa State, 30 against Kent State, 24 Colorado State, 51 against Maryland, 23 against Penn State, 7 against Purdue. But still, I mean, in the games that we've won, we've scored in the 20s. It's going to be, if we win, I think I was telling Bo, and this is sort of leading us into hot takes, but yeah, I really think it's either going to be a close Iowa win or Iowa blows them out. So I don't think it's going to be the other way around.
I love it.
Yep. Love it.
All right.
Well, with that being said, Rob, I'll pass to you for a hot take. I know, Iowa winning may be a hot take for some people, but would love to hear what you think is a hot take for this upcoming weekend.
And you know what I've really enjoyed? I'd like to take this time to just I really enjoyed all the hot takes that we've had, especially with our special guests, because sometimes our special guests are sort of just coming out of the left field with some of the hot takes they have, and it's interesting to see other fans' perspectives on the same subject. When we're talking about playing against the Hawks and things like that. So really interesting. I love that. But my hot take has to do with Wisconsin, believe it or not. But I really think, like I said, I was talking to Bo, earlier in the day. I said I think it's either going to be a blowout by the Hawks or they're just going to win, in a close, like, gut wrenching game sort of situation. I think that if Wisconsin, this is my hot take, if Wisconsin is gonna have a chance to win this game, I don't think it's Graham Mertz who's gonna be under center.
That's big time. That's big time. Who's their backup? I think his last name's Wolf. Kind of badass.
Yeah,
I think he's only gotten like maybe 10 snaps this year. So that's pretty damn hot, Rob.
That is very hot.
and I can come up
That's
with
just-
another one if we need to, but let's cycle around. Well, I want to hear everyone else's hot takes.
Yeah, I'll go next here. So first off, I'm actually going to be, as Dylan alluded to, I'm going to be in Wisconsin this week. So before I go into my hot take, over under 10 beers that I drink before kickoff. Anybody got the over or the under there?
I'll take the under. I don't think you can do it.
Wow.
I got over.
Wow. Thanks.
Wait, are you
Brad.
drinking Busch Light apples?
Duh. Or Busch Light
Oh.
Rigs. Either way, that's not a hot take because I can easily do that, and I'm gonna. But seriously though, my hot take for this week is that everyone, except for Dill, thinks this is going to be a ground and pound game, and most of these games get over with in about 2.5 hours. I'm going to say it's going to be longer than 3.5 hours this week. I think that, like you guys alluded to, I think the Hawks are going to keep it on the ground, relatively, quite a bit, but they're going to throw the ball around. They're going to get out of bounds. They're going to score quick. If that happens to be the case against my prediction, then that clock is not going to run as fast as what we're thinking. It's going to be a long, fun game.
Okay. Those are certainly some hot takes, fellas. Hot takes.
Surprised you
I
didn't say
like
mine
it.
was lukewarm.
So you went to the actual over the whole length of the game.
Yeah. So usually, on average, it's about 3 hours and 24 minutes is the average college football game. So I think that this game is going to take an hour and a half or 3.5 hours, whereas most Iowa, Wisconsin games usually only last about 2.5 hours.
Okay. So, fellas, I not only have one, but I have two hot takes for this one.
Ooh.
As I alluded to in my prediction, this Phil Parker defense will not be embarrassed 2 weeks in a row. I don't see it. It's not going to happen. They're going to come out of this game with 3 turnovers. That's hot. That's sizzling hot. Better yet, I think at least one, maybe even two. I'm going to go 2. Let's keep it even hot. 2 are going to be fumbles.
Wow.
2 are going to be fumbles. The man, Justin Jacobs himself, with at least one of those strips as well. So 2 fumbles, 1 pick. Second hot take, to all the Spencer haters out there, I think he's going to be flipping you double birds walking off the field at about 2:30, give or take, 2:30 Saturday afternoon, because he's going to throw 3 touchdowns in this win up in Madtown, and this is going to set the boys up for a big second half of the season.
Love it.
We'll get into that hot take later on, but that's what
Love
I
it.
got. 3 TDs from Petrus, 3 turnovers on D. Let's go.
Love it.
Wow. Well, that's a heck of a hot take, and I really love it. I think it's turnovers are going to be a big sort of battle when it comes to these two teams. I was just trying to look up how many hours was the longest college football game, and I was trying to find how many hours the Penn State Illinois game was.
I was going to say, you probably have to look up that one because that's got to be one of the longest out there with 9 overtimes last week. Crazy.
I mean, right now all I'm seeing is Arkansas 03 Arkansas Kentucky ended up going 4 hours and 56 minutes, but I know that Illinois Penn State game, it might not have been maybe as long per se as that, but I know it was the most overtimes.
So consecutive, all in one like sitting, right? Because that Iowa State game from 2019 was like 6 or 7 hours just because of all the rain delays.
Right. So
So-
they don't count that one.
I was gonna say that shouldn't count.
Oh.
But it didn't list like an actual like hour, but I'm sure it had to be at least 4. But anyways, I'm just trying to put in perspective. 3.5 hours, that's a long game.
That is.
It is.
And guys, before we do wrap up, we do have a couple mailbag questions that have rolled in from the Twitter sphere. So number 1 comes from Condor, the Meadow Morgan. He wants to know, guys, who was the bigger NFL bust based on college hype, Ron Dane or Robert Gallery?
I hate to say Robert Gallery, but I gotta go Gallery. How many games he played with the Raiders? Only like less than 10.
You know, I think most of our loyal listeners know I'm Raider Nation faithful and obviously a huge Hawk fan. So I was fired up when my Raiders drafted him. And the poor guy, he just did not pan out. I think he just projected more to a college guard. And then as soon as they moved him down to guard, his natural position where he started doing well, then he hit the injury bug and he hit it nonstop and, went on to have a pretty decent career with Seattle after Oakland. But I'd probably lean towards him as well. But then again, you got to remember we're younger guys here. So a lot of us don't know who Ron Dane is. And Bo, bring him up in Madison and you will hear stories on stories on stories like we tell about guys like Freddie Russell and Brad Banks. Ron Dane is that highly thought of. I think, was he a Heisman Trophy winner? Or he might have been a Heisman Trophy runner-up. I can't remember exactly, but nonetheless, an absolute unit. I mean, think Jerome Bettis of college football. That's what Ron Dane was to Wisconsin. That dude was just an animal. So
I remember Ron Dane. Trust me.
Okay.
And I got some stats on him. And his nickname, by the way, is Thunder because he was a part of that Thunder and Lightning situation that they had going on in Buffalo. No, the Giants. Anyways, Ron Dane actually and Robert Gallery both played 7 years respectively in the NFL. And Bo just put in the chat, Ron Dane was the Heisman winner. So
okay.
You can add him to the, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor type. He's right in there with those guys. But I mean, I don't know, Ron Dane. I feel like Ron Dane had a pretty decent NFL career, so I'm gonna have to say Ron Dane. Plus, I mean, he's got the name sort of recognition. I mean, maybe it's because he played a skill position. But Robert Gallery, I mean, 6'7", 325, huge guy. Played at Oakland for most of his career. He was a Raider, so obviously you gotta love that deal.
The Raiders.
Yeah. Started, a lot of games, played a lot of games. I mean, it was 104 games he played in the NFL versus Ron Dane's 96. So, I mean, it's really kind of a toss. I'm going to go Ron Dane, though.
But to that point, though, Rob, too, I think a lot of our parents or even a little bit older Hawkeye fans remember Robert Gallery from the Iowa days of just being this nasty, tenacious lineman. And they're like, you guys, like, to my dad anyway, Robert Gallery is one of his favorite Hawkeyes of all time just because of how good and how ferocious he was on the O-line.
Oh, absolutely.
So I know he's obviously not a Heisman caliber like Ron Dane was, but to a lot of folks, he was a superior athlete and a tremendous Hawkeye too.
Well, an Outland Trophy winner, which is the Heisman Trophy of the offensive line. So, yeah, absolute unit.
Any other mailbag questions we got?
That'll do her, bud.
Awesome. Well, although we didn't have a special guest this week, I still think this was a special episode. It was back to our roots. And so, speaking of that, I don't know if they're going to be the Wisconsin pep band is going to be playing this song that you guys know and love at the end of this game. But I know that we will be singing it in Iowa City, and hopefully, Bo, you'll have the bragging rights in Madison when it comes to the end of this football game. But we're going to end it with some Hawkeye victory polka. Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.
All righty. Cheers. Cheers, fellas. Let's go Hawks. Let's get the W in Madtown, baby. Woo!